This is the Jubilee Year of Mercy. But what is mercy? We often think of mercy as forgiveness. And mercy really does include forgiveness, and that's a big, important part of mercy. But mercy is much more than forgiveness. One way of getting to what mercy means is by looking at the many uses of mercy in Scripture. What we find is that there are many words that are translated into English as mercy, coming from either the Hebrew or the Greek or even the later Latin translation of the Hebrew and Greek originals. So, let's consider a few and see if it helps us understand mercy a little bit better. The first word that we encounter is chesed. And chesed is the Hebrew word that's used to describe God's covenantal loyalty, God's special love that God has for his people. Sometimes you'll see it's translated as steadfast love. The image here is something constant, something sure, something enduring. The traditional Greek translation, known as the Septuagint, translates the word chesed as eleos in Greek, which also means mercy, compassion. It can also mean pity. And we see it translated sometimes in the New Testament as pity. We see passages where Jesus pities the people he passes by. We hear people cry out, Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, or Lord have pity on me. So whenever we hear that Lord have mercy at the liturgy, we should think in terms of Lord have pity on me. And pity doesn't really mean the negative thing that we often attach to it. We often think of pity as something where we're looking down on another person. But pity is really being moved by the suffering of another. And that's the kind of pity that Jesus shows. Another interesting word that we see translated as mercy sometimes is the word racham, which is a Hebrew verb meaning to have mercy or compassion, but it's derived from the noun rachem, meaning womb. So this is an intimate, maternal, motherly, parental image. So the mercy that we see here, the image we get here is of parental love, of nurturing love. So this notion also comes into Greek with a couple of interesting words. The first is oiktermos, which is often used to render the notion of racham in Greek by the Septuagint. Some translators say it has a visceral meaning, pointing to a compassion that wells up from one's gut. So think of when you say you have a gut instinct, or you know something in your gut, something a knowledge that comes from deep inside. We also see the word splagna, which literally does mean one's innards. Sometimes you'll see it translated as even bowels, your intestines, and it's used in passages with eleos and oiktermos, and it's rendered as something like compassion or pity. And again, as we mentioned, pity is being moved by one's suffering. So it's being moved from deep within. It comes from deep inside. This brings us to the Latin word for mercy, misericordia. We also see this word in the Romance languages that are derived from Latin, like Spanish and Italian, as the word that translates mercy. Comes from the Latin root miser, suffering, where we get our English word misery, and cor, heart. So we see once again the notion of mercy as A, sharing in the suffering of another, and B, coming from deep within, from one's heart. So through the various languages of our faith tradition, what we see is that mercy is something that can be connected with the womb, the gut, and the heart. In all of those images,
Mercy is something that wells up from one's inmost being. It comes from who one is. So when we talk about God's mercy, the question we have to ask is, well, who is God? Well, 1 John tells us something that sums up all of salvation history, everything we believe about God as Trinity. 1 John tells us that God is love. Therefore, God's mercy is the compassion that flows from who God is, from God's inmost self. If we are to imitate God's mercy this year and always, we have to allow God's mercy and the merciful acts that we do to transform our inner being. May God's mercy be with you always and shine forth in all that you do.